Tonight, violence in the heartland. Years of vilifying law enforcement turned schools into fight clubs.
There are reports that have come forward that the school resource officers aren't in the schools because of a dispute over DEI training.
Can we fix our culture before these kids become adults? Hell on earth. Haiti descends into chaos.
Haiti is no Garden of Eden in the Caribbean.
Led by a gang leader named Barbecue. The new calls for a naval blockade to keep the worst of Haiti from invading our shores. March Madness. Trump sees his court cases crumble while Biden's poll numbers stay stagnant. What can Democrats do if the court cases don't take Donald Trump out? And where's Kate?
Where is Kate Middleton?
This is the last time we have ever seen her. Do you know how long ago it was? Christmas Day.
We have zero idea where this woman is.
The princess disappears from view, and a bad Photoshop job only makes things worse. How Kate Middleton's Cinderella story turned into another royal tragedy. Welcome to the fairest show on television. First tonight, Fight Club. America's schools, quite literally, no longer have rules. That's because school resource officers are triggering. Meritocracy is racist. Bullies can't be punished. Violent kids can't be suspended. Predictably, our schools have now turned into fight clubs. And of course, social media and kids recording it contributed to the problem. But there are some much darker forces at work. The young woman whose skull was bashed in after school in Missouri will have lasting and serious brain damage. Right now, she is fighting for her life. You might remember everybody just left her there on the street. Just a few miles away from there, in Jennings, Missouri, a 14-year-old was stabbed to death after school, likely by classmates. We'll wait and see if that school district writes the murder off as bullying. After all, the Hazelwood School District put out a statement about the video from last week, calling the brutal fight you see there nothing more than bullying. It's just something that happens between kids. In their statement, of course, there was no discussion of justice or holding the assailant to account or stopping violence in schools. But that's the neo-Marxist worldview right now. There is no responsibility, especially not with a black assailant and a white victim. People just can't be held responsible. Turns out, Hazelwood, like so many schools around America now, don't have cops at the school.
There are reports that have come forward that the school resource officers aren't in the schools because of a dispute over DEI training. And I think, to the extent that bears out, and the school was prioritizing diversity, equity, inclusion training over having uniformed police officers in the school to prevent, deter, and investigate criminal behavior, that's going to be a major tragedy that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, but maybe addressed. Who knows if it changes? Kids can now beat up their weaker classmates without fear. The 14-year-old who was murdered was in Jennings, Missouri. It's a mostly black suburb not far from Hazelwood, which in turn, as you can see, is not far from Ferguson. It's hard to believe, but Defund the Police and Black Lives Matter started 10 years ago this summer in my hometown of St. Louis. Since then, murders of black men are up at least 25%. The numbers from the FBI of the last couple of years when murders really exploded are not in yet. So quite literally from 2014, when the social justice movement took root in America, quite literally nobody is better off. Nobody's safer. Tim Fitch lived it. He commanded the St. Louis County Police during Ferguson and was a member of the city council there. Good to see you, sir. As always, we appreciate it. Is it fair to connect the events of 10 years ago and this 14-year-old young man who was murdered and a 15-year-old girl who's fighting for her life?
I think so, because that's when the whole defund the police movement started, was with Ferguson. And we saw the Justice Department come in and take over the Ferguson Police Department. I will tell you that financially, they're in worse position today than they've ever been. They have less cops than they've ever had because they're spending all their money on all of the programs, the consultants, the PhDs, the lawyers that are running the DOJ consent decree program, so they can't spend it on cops. So it absolutely is all part of a big picture of what's going on in that area of St. Louis.
Is Missouri, especially in the schools, as lawless as it appears?
No, absolutely not. It's isolated areas. St. Louis is a wonderful place. I've raised my children there. My 3 grandkids are growing up there. It's very isolated areas of St. Louis City and the northern part of St. Louis County where most of this is going on. There are incidents in other parts of the county and city, but they're very rare violent incidents. Most of the violence is taking place in the areas that you just described.
I think about Hazelwood East High School. Received a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Award in 2022. This is where that 15-year-old girl went to school. However, only 5% of the pupils are proficient in math. Only 21% are proficient in reading, but they have a DEI award. Are you seeing any desire, not among those who are making money from DEI and gain power from it, are you seeing any desire among the residents, the least fortunate among us who get the brunt of this, to change course? Absolutely.
The residents, they've had enough. You know, you heard the progressives say, we need to try something different. Incarcerating individuals, it's not working. We need to try something different. And we've seen what they've tried differently for the last 10 years. Finally, they're starting to reverse some of that. We're starting to see the pendulum swing back. You're seeing that on the West Coast. Look what's going on there with the reversal of a lot of the progressive policies. We're finally starting to see some of that in St. Louis as well. The mayor of St. Louis is elected on a very progressive ticket. She's moderated quite a bit, not, enough for a lot of people's satisfaction, but she's moderated a bit. But that's because that's what the public is demanding. So I really see it going back the other way finally. These are all tipping points for our community in St. Louis.
I zoom out because St. Louis became, the flashpoint for so much of this in the beginning, for so much of this, where that 14-year-old boy was stabbed to death. One of the local TV channels, actually the one that I interned at when I was a young man, went up and interviewed some residents in Jennings, 90% African-American. And she said, look, there's fights every day outside of school, day in and day out outside of this school. So it just is what happens. And we see the video in all of these schools. You were a lawman for your entire career. Can we put the genie back in the bottle before these kids become adults?
I would tell you we have to try. I don't know if it can be done, but we can't give up on our kids. We can't give up on our youth. We have to try. And remember, a lot of them are just emulating behavior they've seen their parents engage in. A lot of them come from broken homes, single parent homes, those type of things. So they're really just
right. But forgive me for interrupting though. But and I want you to have the last word. You say they come from single parent homes. We've been told for the past 10 years that you can't talk about how single parent homes are the leading indicator of whether a kid ends up in jail. And you see the depravity, I think, in that video of the larger girl holding this much smaller person and then banging her head into the sidewalk. That there's a depravity there. This isn't a fight. This is just beating someone senseless. How do you reform a child like that, for lack of a better term?
Well, thankfully, their brains aren't completely mature at that age, 14 and 15 years old. I'm not of the belief that we should just take those individuals and lock them up for the rest of their natural lives. That's not going to serve anybody any good. We have to try to fix a lot of that. And sometimes you have to send people to jail and force them to get some sort of therapy, see if at some point they can be released back to the community. But we'll be lucky if this young girl survives that attack. I mean, That's different than when you and I were in high school, Leland. We might have had fights, but they didn't end in death or near death.
Yeah. No. There's an entire generation, I think, that you're very rightly to point out, not just in St. Louis, but across the country, that hangs in the balance, that the worst of human instincts have been allowed to take hold. It's good to see you, sir. Thanks, as always.
Good to see you. Take care.
The violence in Haiti continues unchecked and getting worse. The country is now run by a gang leader who goes by the nickname or nom de guerre Barbecue. You can decide for yourself why that is. In Florida, they are bracing for a massive influx of Haitian immigrants. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says the federal government is not doing enough, so he is sending hundreds of police, state, and National Guardsmen to the beach to intercept large flotillas of Haitians coming. Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz pressured military leaders on the Hill this week to take preventative action.
Can I leave this discussion believing that it will be your best military advice to the administration to utilize DoD assets for this purpose?
If there's a need for that, I would absolutely request it.
All right, Congressman Matt Gaetz is with us now, member of the Armed Services Committee. Is this actually going to happen, another mass wave of Haitian boat people?
Certainly. Haiti is a failed state right now. The Biden administration officials I was speaking with couldn't distinguish Haiti from a failed state. And we know that is the #1 push factor that sends thousands of people into the Florida Straits, onto Florida shores. And here's the legal status of those folks. If we interdict them at sea, we are able to pull right up to a dock at Port-au-Prince as a consequence of our agreements there, let them out, and they are never part of the immigration system. If they make it to shore, they're able to claim that they fear their conditions in Haiti, they can seek asylum, and that further clogs that system. So
I guess to be fair, interdiction at sea is key. To be fair, who wouldn't have real fear about what's happening in Haiti? The place is run by a guy named Barbecue.
Yeah, I just don't want Southeast Florida to become Haiti. And what's different about a lot of the Haitian migrants that show up is that they don't disperse evenly throughout the country. They often stay in communities in Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach counties. So that means a huge burden on our jails, on our hospitals, our school systems, and the violence that you see from some of these folks is horrendous. When I talked to the Border Patrol and Coast Guard folks, they told stories of these folks like pouring gasoline on little babies on these flotillas to try to deter a boarding. And the reason Joe Biden isn't doing enough is because he hasn't yet declared an anticipated state of a mass migration over water. If he were to do that, we could get naval vessels in the Florida Straits to deter this migration. We could take action now. The Biden administration is not doing it. Bravo, Ron DeSantis, for getting some force posture in place. But remember, those folks will only encounter the Haitians once they've landed and have a right to claim asylum. If Biden did the right thing, they'd be right back in Port-au-Prince.
All right, so CBP agents have encountered 130 Haitian migrants at the U.S. southern border since October of 2021. You can imagine some of the 4,000 let out of Haiti's maximum security prison by the gangs, and others are going to be trying to make it into the United States through the southern border. What is the end game, in the best case scenario, for people keeping people from leaving Haiti to begin with?
Well, I mean, Haiti is no Garden of Eden in the Caribbean. It has been a really problematic place for a great deal of time, and I don't know that the United States becoming the block captain of Haiti is the answer here.
Didn't we do that once?
Yeah, it didn't exactly pan out, right? It's led to a lot of the conditions and the corruption that now have Haiti as a lawless failed state. There's going to have to be some sort of long-term resolution there, but in the short term, you're looking at a massive impact on the United States, one that is absolutely preventable if Joe Biden would take the appropriate action to put those naval vessels in place.
All right, so if you think about the really bad places, the truly awful places in the world, from North Korea, I think you could add Gaza right now to it. You could certainly add Yemen, Somalia. The closest one to American shores is Haiti. And I remember writing a senior thesis paper about the Haitian Revolution, right? You had 3 democratic revolutions in the 1700s. The French worked out all right. The Americans were still doing pretty well. And the Haitians has been a complete disaster since the 1700s.
Even Alexander Hamilton himself said that democracy would never work in Haiti, that it could not be a republic by virtue of some of those very dynamics.
And some of it, well, there you go. You see a man of history as well. So I ask you this. Why is it that all the do-gooders who are so concerned about what's going on in Gaza right now, where there are people starving and there are people dying, are absolutely uninterested in the millions who face starvation in Haiti and the extreme violence that exists on the streets of Haiti?
I mean, look, the saddest state of the human condition I've ever observed was when I went to an AIDS clinic in Haiti and saw how people were living there, and it was horrendous. And so I do think it's appropriate for us to be more focused on what's going on here in the Western Hemisphere than oceans away, where our impact is not as universally positive in other parts of the world. Here, this is our backyard.
How does this spiral out of control, right? You have gangs that then take over. You have military-grade weapons there. You have, a couple million Americans a year who go to the Dominican Republic on the same island to vacation. And then all of a sudden, barbecue becomes president. That doesn't end up well for America.
No, it doesn't. And it doesn't end up well for the Dominican Republic. And frankly, it creates a cascading effect throughout the Caribbean that's destabilizing. I think it's because the government there lost legitimacy, was deemed corrupt, and there was a parity of force between the gangs that were running the streets and the entity that was in the government. And when you have that parity, you see collapse. You know what a good example is? What Nayib Bukele has done in El Salvador. Let's take that model and try to apply it to Haiti. Let's lock up the criminal gangs. Let's apply some semblance of order. And sure, you're going to break some eggs along the way, but look at where El Salvador is right now. I mean, they were Haiti in a lot of ways, a decade ago.
Well, it doesn't seem as though barbecue is going to be bringing the El Salvador model.
Barbecue's in an El Salvadorian prison in El Salvador.
Right.
He's not running the government.
Well said. Congressman, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much. Half of parents across America are financially supporting their adult children. Democrats blame inflation. Maybe it's just a generation that wants to be coddled for life. How this ends. And speaking to the younger generation, the House overwhelmingly votes to protect us from the Chinese social media app TikTok. Is Congress agreeing a good sign, or a sign that they just can't get more important stuff done? Pictures of the Capitol where, in very rare bipartisan fashion, the House passed a bill by an overwhelming majority. You can see a beautiful sunset on this Wednesday evening. The vote, 352 to 65. They can't even agree to name post offices by that margin. The bill requires China to sell its interests in TikTok within 6 months or the app gets banned. And that makes sense, right? Our biggest adversary, controlling the phones of 1/3 of America, is dangerous. If China wanted to put sensors in 1/3 of America's homes, we wouldn't let them. China calls the act bullying, which is pretty rich because China bans all American social media, bar none, in their country. From TikTok, this process was secret and the bill was jammed through for one reason. It's a ban. We're hopeful that the Senate will reconsider their facts, listen to their constituents, and realize the impact on the economy. 7 million small businesses and 170 million Americans who use our service, which is interesting because there's really no impact on small businesses. They can use other social media. But it's pretty rich, right? China complaining about the democratic process in America, calling it secret. They are right. Roughly 1/3 of America uses TikTok, the Chinese Communist Party, and thus their intelligence services control TikTok. Therefore, the Chinese can control the feeds of everybody who uses TikTok. So it probably explains why so many young people, about 50%, are pro-Hamas rather than Israel. America loves division in America. There are a lot of bad things that China does in America that Congress either can't or won't deal with. Buying U.S. farmland, buying U.S. companies and food producers, the vast theft of not only defense secrets, the F-22 and the F-35, but the massive theft of American inventions that the Chinese recreate and don't pay American inventors for. The Confucius Institutes on college campuses that are peddling the Chinese story. They should be shut down. Congress won't. There's the honey trap operations, like the Fan scandal that entrapped Representative Eric Swalwell, Democrat of California. Of course, he denies all wrongdoing in that, but there are photos. The Chinese police stations operating all across America that surveil, threaten, and harass Chinese Americans and some Americans and threaten people who speak up against the Chinese. The list of bad things that China is doing that Congress should take action on is endless. But at least they've done something. And guess what? The Chinese are angry. So maybe they're doing something useful. TikTok spent a lot of money lobbying Congress. They bought ads. In fact, they got people.
His karate lessons might not turn him into a black belt.
Hi-ya!
And even after band camp, he might not be the greatest musician. But with the 3% annual percentage yield you can earn on a PenFed premium online savings account, your goal of supporting his dreams...
Thanks for everything, Mom and Dad.
...will always be worth it. Apply today at PenFed.org/savings. Federally insured by NCUA. $5 minimum to open account. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed.
PenFed's got great rates for everyone.
Rewind TV. Play back the 80s and 90s with TV's totally tubular characters.
I'm a witch. Alex P. Keaton here.
Play back the neon memories.
Heavy duty.
The major laughs.
I think it's hysterical. Excuse me, if I just want to laugh, just a little.
And the radical catchphrases.
What you talking about, Willis?
Your favorite sitcoms from the 80s and 90s are all in one place. Rewind TV. Just go to rewindtv.com and check it out.
If you're wondering what state has the most dangerous roads in America, a consumer affairs study says it's Texas. Out of 79,000 miles of Texas highways, there were 4,000 fatal crashes that produced 4,400 deaths in 2021. California is second, Florida is third. Egg prices are going up again due to avian flu. Data Assembly, which measures grocery prices in real time, reports egg prices have surged in certain parts of the country, the largest being Minneapolis and Buffalo-Rochester. Orlando's egg prices have gone up as well. Walmart is once again expanding same-day delivery services, but this time for the morning hours. Starting in mid-March, shoppers can set up orders to be delivered to their doorsteps starting at 6 a.m. Previously, 8 a.m. was the earliest time of the day for delivery. I'm Mark Huffman. Learn more at consumeraffairs.com.
This is The Making of America from the Jefferson Media Group. If you don't know the name C.J. Walker, you should. Born in December of 1867, she was the first child in her family born into freedom, following President Lincoln's signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. She was orphaned at age 7, and with only 3 months of education began working as a child servant. But as she grew into adulthood, she saw a need and filled it. She developed cosmetics and hair care products for African American women and became the first self-made female millionaire in America. From poverty to entrepreneur to multimillionaire, her creativity and hard work exemplified the American dream. This has been The Making of America. I'm Michael Emerson, and you can visit us at jeffersonmediagroup.com.
You're listening to On Balance with Leland Vittert on NewsNation, America's fastest growing cable news network.
The old saying is that persistence pays, but how and when? Dr. Gary Probst here will share a thought about not giving up in just a moment.
David was in big trouble with the IRS.
At first, I didn't owe that much, but after this year, it was out of control.
Then David called Get a Tax Lawyer.
Right away, they were like, oh yeah, looks like you're qualified to save.
Get a Tax Lawyer went to work.
Should have called way sooner.
Get a Tax Lawyer has helped thousands like David fight the IRS and get a fresh start.
Call 800-783-0798. That's 800-783-0798.
Are you having a difficult day? Consider this. Anyone can give up. It's the easiest thing to do. But to persist when others expect you to quit is the definition of strength. I'll often meet patients with no hope. Life has frustrated them to a point where they question its meaning. I remind them that their entire life could have purpose in a single moment. A kind word when somebody is down, a simple gesture of support and understanding can lift another person from giving up on life or taking their life to one with a renewed sense of purpose. Thomas Edison said, "I did not fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was invented with 1,000 steps." Colonel Sanders failed in business before KFC franchised later in his life. We all have the ability to do great things if we simply persist.
Fix the drywall now. Number 2, you have 1 month to find jobs here. I will arrange interviews for Monday, and you will go.
We thought that you should take responsibility for your own lives.
And this is the exciting part. We're going to put enough money in your accounts for a security deposit on an apartment.
Turns out Step Brothers is reality for about half of America. Savings.com reports 50% of U.S. parents financially support their adult children. Most adult children who live at home pay absolutely zilch in rent. They are dumping an average of $1,384 a month on financial support for their kids. That's tax-free money. And it makes sense, right? Generation Zs get about $1,500 a month, millennials $907, Gen Xers $960. That's kids all the way up to 59 years old. They're not really kids anymore. And there are a lot of expenses that parents are covering, all kinds of things. Groceries, food, that makes sense. Cell phone bills, rent, mortgages, tuition, and other health insurance. Trish Regan's here, co-founder of the investment research firm 76research.com, host of the Trish Regan Show. Congrats on the new firm. Nice to see you. All right. Is this just sort of a sign of the times of how expensive life has gotten and kids can't make ends meet? Or is it a generation that is so used to being coddled, God forbid they go without whatever skincare product that they had, and therefore mom and dad pay for it?
Yeah, I'm tempted to go with the latter there. I mean, look, everything is expensive. We get it, right? But this is contributing to that expense to a certain extent, because if parents are bankrolling their kids, as you say, still putting them on the payroll, then you're going to have problems. I do think that you have a generation of young people, and apparently not so young, according to those stats you showed, 55 to 59, you're still getting a handout from mom and dad. I don't know what to tell you. But in other words, people, Leland, are coddled so much. We have a generation of young people that doesn't know what it's like, to not have the money you need to make it through the week or the month. I mean, they can just say, hey, mom, hey, dad, help. And there it is.
Yeah, well, yeah, mom and dad are already helping. Look, you also think, though, about the amount of wealth that was created in America, and not even just wealth, but that families were comfortable, right? Clinton, 2.86% average inflation rate. Bush, 2.8%. Obama, 1.4%. I mean, the good times were rolling in America for so long. I know, look, you covered them. But then I think about what's happening right now in terms of all of these parents, the working parents who are helping their kids out. They're giving their kids twice as much per month, about an average of $1,400 a month, as they are putting in their retirement funds. I don't know how that ends well.
No, it doesn't. Look, people have to have money for one day when they retire. Look, I am a big believer in work ethic, and we all like to work, and I think it keeps our minds activated. But you don't want to work, Leland, because you have to work, right? You ought to have enough saved that you're going to be able to get by, and work becomes a passion and not just a way to sustain yourself. And by the way, your deadbeat kids. You've got to be planning. And I think people make this mistake, right? Okay, I'm going to give money to my kids because you know what? We are a very altruistic bunch. We are good people. Americans, they want to help their kids. They want to give them a leg up. But they're doing it at their own expense.
Is it because we're are we altruistic and all nice, or has America sort of gotten so soft that we're past the point of no return, right? That there is no desire to have any kind of fiscal responsibility, be it enforced on our kids or be it enforced on our government?
I mean, any which way you look at it, for sure, there's no fiscal responsibility in government. You got to go back to Clinton, right, to get a balanced budget. So that ship has sailed. And then you look at what's happening with families, and you look at all the social coddling, et cetera. Think about school even. I mean, the school aspect of this. Why can't we have a class in home economics? I mean, real home economics. Forget the cookies. Let's actually learn how to balance a checkbook. Let's learn, right, what it means when you take out a mortgage.
I think there's a lot of kids who are watching right now who'd wonder what a checkbook is. I think there's a lot of kids who'd wonder what a checkbook is.
Well, that's true. That might be, you're gonna figure out how to balance that debit card that you got going to the bank. In other words, the ATM is not like some kind of candy machine. That this is real money.
Yeah. Well, now the issue where this comes, right, and you predicted this, is the inflation issue. And this is since President Biden took office, but it's basically since the pandemic began. Sugar up 30%, bread 25%, butter 28%, chicken up 11%, eating out 21%, food at home up 21%, rent up 20%. All of these people who are giving their kids a nice life, and look, you don't ever want to fault a parent for trying to help their kids. But at the same time, are their retirement savings going to be there? Not necessarily be there. They'll be there, but are they going to be enough with where inflation is right now?
Well, it's a great question. It's why I think you need to stay invested. It's why you want to be invested. It's why you want a diversified portfolio. I mean, here I am. It's, preaching my
76research.com. We'll put it up on the screen for you.
But yeah, 76research.com. I mean, this is what we're actually all about. I'm really pretty passionate about this and have been for a long time because so many people say to me, Trish, what do I do? Like, how do I invest for the future? They're scared. They're nervous. I get it. And what you've got to somehow be able to do is invest so that one day, yes, you can retire, but you're not actually going to be drawing down on principal. So you want to be living off interest at some point in your life. And that means starting early. Look, the younger you are, the more aggressive you can be. But people have to have a plan. I mean, I can't stress that enough. You cannot rely on Uncle Sam. Who the heck knows? I mean, if Social Security is going to be there, good luck on that one. And they may means test it, et cetera. And so you can't rely on government. You can't rely on friends and family because you are the friends and family, right? You're the one that's paying for the kids.
That's what it's coming to.
And you've got to actually have a plan. So it means people making really tough decisions, even when it comes to their kids, saying, okay, you know what, hon? We're not going to do that $1,000 a month. Instead, I'm going to put that into mom and dad's retirement. And maybe actually then you can help them more later on in the future.
Gen Z isn't really into tough decisions. That's sort of the way the life is. Trish, thank you very much. We'll talk soon.
It's good to see you.
All right. Buckingham Palace, the royal family in the UK, they've got a real problem. People actually want to know where Kate Middleton is. Princess Kate, you might know. And the royal family's only hope at Renaissance was Princess Kate. Nobody cared why she dropped out of sight after a medical procedure 3 months ago. Nobody even really knew it or talked about it. But now she's the talk of the world, and it took only one royal Photoshop failure, as if Buckingham Palace thought they could sneak this one past the press. They put out a badly edited proof-of-life photo for English Mother's Day. And now, of all people, even The Daily Show want to know, where's Kate?
It should be noted, I didn't even know or care about Kate Middleton's leave of absence, but then you release a photo so edited they have to issue a kill order? Well, now I'm all in, all right? And the palace better have a good explanation for this.
Their explanation was Kate sometimes edits her photographs. Not a good explanation. Even more telling, we here on the program have been talking about where Kate is. Massive PR failure. Buckingham Palace figured out how to make this show do a segment on a missing princess. Emma Webb is here, UK royal watcher and a fellow at the New Culture Forum. Do you know where Kate is?
I think that she's had abdominal surgery and that she's resting up. I think that this entire thing is completely confected. So it wasn't just as a result of this photograph. There had been already a week or more of people having sort of Netflix-style conspiracies on Twitter about where Princess Kate might be. And some of the suggestions were really outlandish and very British specific, so I won't go into them. But the reality is that this is it's all very confected. We knew already that the princess had abdominal surgery, that she was going to
get that. And look, Twitter by definition is out there. Yeah, Twitter's out there, but you like, what was it? The royal family just decided, or the palace, quote unquote, thought that they could put this out and nobody would question it?
Well, this is definitely a PR mistake, and I think they should be looking at who on earth is advising them, because they're obviously not getting the best advice. It's quite astonishing, actually, that firstly this could go out, and then an unprecedented apology from the Princess of Wales for this photo going out. I wouldn't be surprised if it is actually true that she does edit some of her own photographs, because she's known to be an amateur photographer. She's had photography exhibitions. It's one of her hobbies. So she probably does experiment with Photoshop. So it's not completely beyond the pale. But the reality is that the conspiracy started long before this photo. The photo was obviously backfired.
Yeah, but it's sort of like, Emma, all I'm going to say is that if I'm ever in trouble for putting out a heavily edited Photoshop as a proof of life, you are my first call as my spokesperson. You will go down with the ship as a true believer. I'm thinking to myself, maybe I have this all wrong. And so this is my own little conspiracy theory. You can tell me. Okay, the royals have become completely irrelevant. After the Queen died and Diana was gone, the Queen dies, it's done. Harry, went off to be Harry. Mercifully is out of the news. William's boring. Kate was it. Is this some kind of like super, 3D underwater chess thing to all of a sudden have Kate reemerge more famous and the world will be more obsessed than ever?
I doubt it. I think we don't actually have any reason other than to take the palace at their word that she has just had abdominal surgery. And it's interesting from my perspective because before this show, I had a look to see what American media was saying about this. And the American media have been so interested in this in comparison to the British media. There have been some stories about it, but it hasn't been this kind of feeding frenzy. And I wonder why that is. Why it is that Americans are so interested in this? Because, of course, the royal family are having a hard time at the moment. The king has obviously had this cancer diagnosis. He's been very open about his medical situation. The Princess of Wales wants to keep that quiet. And I know we live in an age where everybody thinks that everybody's medical history should be on show for the world post-COVID. But the reality is that she has a right to her medical privacy. And she said she wasn't going to be doing any royal duties until Easter. It's not yet Easter. We should just wait and see. We know that there's been some talk about her already being booked to be involved in the Trooping of the Colour. Unclear as to what her role will be in that. But I think we should just wait and see, and that this is actually
the British stiff upper lip endures.
Why are we so interested?
Yeah, it's a good question. Stiff upper lip endures. Emma, it's good to see you. Thank you. All right, young man enlisted in the military at 17. He says he was hungover, exhausted, and hungry. Then he made it to Yale. How one foster kid beat the odds in his indictment of America's elite that preaches to all of us from the Ivy Towers. In a recent column, Henderson grew up in a foster home with the ad stocked against him. Foster homes, plural. Will writes, having lived as a baby in his drug-addicted mother's car, having been shuttled between 9 families before his 8th birthday, Rob Henderson, now 34, was a troubled boy, could have become a troubled adult. Instead, he became a Yale graduate, earning a PhD from the University of Cambridge. He did indeed beat the odds. Henderson credits, of all things, the U.S. military for changing everything. Henderson is with us now. His new book is titled Trouble. Congratulations on the success on the book. We appreciate you being with us. In the book, you write a lot about the problems of luxury beliefs. How do you define those?
Yeah, thank you, Leland. Well, luxury beliefs are ideas and opinions that confer status on the elite while often inflicting costs on the lower classes. And toward the end of Troubled, I described this sort of sociological framework and the empirical findings sort of undergirding this, but it was a concept that I developed during my experiences and studies at Yale, and then later when I was doing my PhD at Cambridge. But a lot of it did develop out of my early life experiences living in the foster system in Los Angeles, and then through a series of kind of fragmented families later when I was adopted into this working class community in Northern California, and then in the military, and then to college. And so I've just had a sort of varied life, and the luxury beliefs idea was born out of that. And a key feature of a luxury belief is that the believer is sheltered from the consequences of his or her beliefs. And I saw that clearly in a variety of different elite universities.
Fascinating. I think sort of the soft bigotry of low expectations plays into that, if I have it correctly understood. For every male foster kid like me who obtains a college degree, you wrote, 20 are locked up. Is the answer now we give young troubled men a choice like they did in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s? You either go to boot camp or you go to jail on their first offense?
You know, I don't think it needs to be that extreme, but I do think that the importance of structure, constraints, boundaries, all of those things that I lacked, all of this sort of neglect and oversight throughout my early life, and then later when I was adopted into this kind of deteriorating working class community where there was a lot of divorce and single parenthood and poverty and addiction. And all of those things are in large part, the result of luxury beliefs.
You have said the term working class a couple of times. Is the divide now in America not so much red and blue, but working class versus elite?
Oh, I definitely agree with that. I mean, you know, I've seen, you know, sort of every strata of American society in terms of social class. And, you know, I Yeah, I've seen that two a college-educated Republican and a college-educated Democrat have much more in common in terms of their outlook, their hopes, their aspirations, their lifestyles, relative to, if you take a working-class Democrat versus a college-educated Democrat. And you can see this in statistics and survey data. I mean, the gap between classes in terms of who was supporting defund the police, it was much wider across classes than it was between Democrats and Republicans.
Rob, I want to just get one quick thing in. And look, you're an extraordinary young man in every way, shape, and form. And what you've been able to accomplish is extraordinary. I think a lot of people would be watching this and go, okay, there's always the one in a couple of million, right? The kid who is so extraordinary and so driven, and that's Rob Henderson. Everybody else is just not like that and can't pull themselves up by the bootstraps. I'm wondering if you feel as though you succeeded because of the system or despite the system, and the system needs to change to create more Rob Hendersons.
I succeeded despite it. I emphasize throughout the book, I wouldn't wish these experiences on anyone. I don't believe in this idea of, struggle and difficulty. I mean, up to a point it can help, but not that extreme level of chaos and disorder that I experienced. I think almost anyone who, there's, you cited those statistics earlier, 20 times more foster kids go to jail than